Sometimes I wake up in the dark and I can still hear the sound of a door closing, soft as a sigh, like it happened 5 minutes ago instead of 50 years. My name is Harold Bennett, and I'm 90 years old. And the thing that keeps me awake at night isn't my back or my heart or the fear of dying. It's the one conversation I avoided until it was impossible to have. People assume that by 90 you make peace with everything, that you sit in your chair, watch the sun move across the floor, and you're wrapped in some warm blanket of acceptance. I wish that were true. There are many things I've accepted. I've accepted that my hands shake when I pour coffee, that my knees argue with stairs, that my hearing comes and goes like a stubborn child. I've even accepted the funerals, more of them than I ever imagined when I was young. But there's one part of my life that never settled down inside me, no matter how much time passed, and it's the part where I swallowed the truth to keep the peace. It started, as most regrets do, with something small. Not the big dramatic moment you expect in movies. It was a Tuesday. I remember that because the trash cans were out on the curb and the neighbor's dog was barking like he had a complaint with the whole world. My wife, Evelyn, was at the kitchen table, turning a teacup in her hands. She had the look she got when she had been practicing a sentence in her head for hours and still didn't know how to place it gently. I had just come home from work. I was 42 then. I wore a tie every day, even in the heat, because that's what men did where I worked, and because I liked the way it made me look dependable. I kissed her cheek without really looking at her face. I set my briefcase down. I asked what was for dinner, all the ordinary words that keep life moving. And she said, "Harold, can you sit with me for a minute?" Now, there are two kinds of a minute in a marriage. There's the kind where she wants to tell you about a funny story, and there's the kind where she wants to tell you she's been lonely in a house full of people. Her voice had that thin edge to it, like a thread pulled too tight. I sat, but not fully. I perched, as if my body could show I was listening while my mind stayed at the office. I even loosened my tie, like that counted as intimacy. She said, "I feel like you're here, but you're not with me." I remember staring at a spot on the table where the light from the window made a pale rectangle. I wanted to argue with her. I wanted to list all the things I did, all the hours I worked, all the bills I paid, the roof, the car, the groceries, the insurance, the plans. I wanted to tell her love looked like responsibility. I wanted to tell her I was tired. But what she really asked for wasn't an explanation. It was my presence. It was my honesty. It was the part of me I kept locked up because I believed a man should be steady, not vulnerable. She kept talking, careful and quiet, like she didn't want to scare me off. She said she missed laughing with me. She missed being touched in a way that meant more than passing in the hallway. She said she could feel me slipping away, and she didn't know how to reach me anymore. If I'm truthful, and I'm trying to be, I had been slipping away for years. Not because I didn't love her. I did. I loved her in the way I understood love, as duty, as loyalty, as showing up, as not leaving. But there was another part of love, the part that says, "I see you," and I was failing her there. I was failing myself too, though I wouldn't have admitted it then. She asked me a question that should have been simple. "Are you happy, Harold?" I can still feel my throat tighten when I think about it. Because I knew the answer that wanted to come out. I knew it in my bones. I wasn't happy. Not with her, not without her, not with my life the way I'd built it. I was proud and I was successful enough and I was respected and I was exhausted. I had been living like a man pushing a heavy cart uphill, one day after another telling himself the hill would end and the view would be worth it. And I was afraid that if I admitted the truth out loud, the cart would tip and everything I'd built would spill. So I did what I had practiced my whole life. I gave the safe answer. I said, "Of course I'm happy. I'm just tired." It was a lie shaped like a shield. I watched her face change, not dramatically, not with tears or shouting, just a soft closing, like a flower folding in on itself at dusk. She nodded as if she accepted it, but something in her eyes told me she heard what I didn't say. She stood up, rinsed her cup, and turned her back to me. And that was the door closing. Not the end of the marriage, not that day, but the start of a quiet distance that grew until it filled every room. If you're listening and you're young, you might think, well, you can fix that. And you can sometimes, but fixing things requires a moment of courage. And I kept postponing mine. I told myself we were going through a phase. I told myself she would understand. I told myself when work eased up, when the kids were older, when we had more money, when we had more time, then I'd be the man she needed. The trouble is, life is always asking you to wait for then. Then is a hungry thing. It eats years. Evelyn tried again more than once. She would say, "Can we talk?" And I'd say, "Not tonight." She would reach for my hand in bed, and I'd squeeze it and then turn over, already thinking about morning. She would make little jokes to draw me out, and I'd smile without really stepping into the moment with her. I wasn't cruel. I never shouted at her. I never cheated. I never walked out. That's what I told myself, as if love were only measured by the sins you didn't commit. But love is also measured by the truths you share, and I shared so few. I grew up in a house where feelings were treated like bad weather. They came, they passed, and you didn't stand in the doorway talking about them. My father was a good man in many ways, but he believed in silence as a kind of strength. If something hurt, you tightened your jaw and kept going. If you were afraid, you swallowed it. If you were sad, you hid it. And if you were unsure about your life, you worked harder so you didn't have to think. I carried that into my marriage like a family heirloom, never questioning if it belonged there. Evelyn, on the other hand, came from people who spoke their hearts, not loudly, but plainly. Her mother would say, "I'm worried," without shame. Her father would say, "I was wrong," and then change. That kind of honesty felt dangerous to me. It felt like stepping onto ice without knowing how thick it was. Years went by. The kids grew. The house got quieter. Evelyn became calmer in a way that should have relieved me, but instead it frightened me. When someone stops asking, it doesn't always mean they're satisfied. Sometimes it means they've given up on being heard. There was one night, I was 58 then, when I came home and found her sitting in the living room with a small suitcase by the door. Not packed for a trip, just sitting there like a thought she had finally allowed herself to touch. She said, "I'm going to my sister's for a while." My heart dropped. It was the first honest feeling I'd had in years, and it was pure panic. I asked why. I asked how long. I asked what I had done. I asked questions that were really about control, not understanding. She looked at me with a tired steadiness. She said, "Harold, I've been living beside you for a long time. I want to know what it feels like to live with you." And there it was again, the invitation, the moment where I could have stopped hiding. I could have said, "I don't know how to do this, but I want to learn." I could have said, "I'm afraid, I'm lonely too. I feel like I built a life that looks right but doesn't feel right." I could have admitted I didn't know how to be close without feeling weak. But I was a man trained to bargain with reality instead of facing it. I said, "Evelyn, don't do this. We have a good life. We have a home. We have family. We're fine. We're fine." Another lie with clean edges. She left for 3 weeks. She came back, but something had shifted. She was kinder in a distant way, like you are with a stranger you don't want to offend. She stopped reaching for me as often. She stopped making those small jokes. She stopped looking at me the way she used to, as if she expected something tender from me and was always hopeful it would arrive. I kept telling myself we were stable, we were functioning, we were married. I didn't understand that a marriage can be alive on paper and dead in the heart. Then Evelyn got sick. It wasn't sudden at first. It was fatigue, a cough that wouldn't quit, weight loss that we blamed on stress, And then a doctor who used careful words, which is how doctors tell you the ground is about to open. Cancer, the kind that doesn't wait for you to get brave. For a while, I became very practical. I scheduled appointments. I filled prescription bottles. I learned how to fold blankets around her shoulders. I became the man I knew how to be, a caretaker, a worker, a problem solver. And people praised me for it. They said, "Harold, you're so strong." And I nodded because that was the role I understood. But there was a different kind of strength she needed from me then. She needed me to sit with her fear without trying to fix it. She needed me to tell her the truth about what I felt. She needed me to confess what I had been too proud or too scared to say for decades. One evening near the end, she was in bed with the lamp on low. The room smelled like lotion and medicine and the faint sweetness of the tea she could barely sip. She looked small in the pillows, but her eyes were clear. She said, "Harold, do you ever think about us, about what we missed?" My chest tightened. I could hear the clock ticking. I could hear the refrigerator humming. I could hear the silence of my own life pressing in on me. She was giving me the final opening, the last chance to stop being the man who avoided the hard sentence. And I did something I'm ashamed to admit. I tried to make it easier. I tried to make it lighter. I said, "Don't talk like that. We had a good life." She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just turned her face slightly toward the wall, and her voice was so quiet I almost didn't catch it. She said, "All right." 2 weeks later, she was gone. People told me I had been a good husband. They said she was lucky to have me. They said all the right things at the funeral, and I stood there in my suit, the same kind of suit I wore to work for decades. And I accepted their comfort like a man accepting a medal for a job he completed. But when the house emptied out and the casseroles stopped coming and the phone stopped ringing, I began to hear the truth that had been waiting for me. The truth was this: I had loved Evelyn, but I had also hidden from her. I had kept the deepest parts of myself sealed away, and in doing that, I had kept her out too. I had chosen safety over intimacy again and again until intimacy no longer knew where to find us. And the worst part was that I didn't just lose her. I lost the chance to let her know that I finally understood what she had been asking for all those years. I lost the chance to say, "You were right. I was afraid. I'm sorry. I wanted to be close to you and I didn't know how." That's what keeps me awake. Not because I think a single conversation would have made everything perfect. Life doesn't work that way. But because the conversation would have been honest, it would have been real. It would have been a moment where I chose love over pride. After she died, I found a box in the back of her closet. It was simple, nothing fancy, just a cardboard box with a ribbon around it. Inside were letters she had written but never sent. Not dozens, only a few. She wasn't dramatic, Evelyn. She didn't waste words. One of the letters was addressed to me. It started, "Dear Harold," and my hands shook so badly I had to sit down. She wrote about the early years, about how she loved my steadiness, how safe she felt when we were young. She wrote about watching me grow distant and how she blamed herself at first. She wrote that she didn't want grand romance. She just wanted to feel like I let her into my inner life. She wrote, "I wanted to be your home, not just your house." And then she wrote one sentence that hit me so hard I had to put the letter down. She wrote, "If you ever tell me what you're afraid of, I will hold it with you." Do you understand what that means? It means she wasn't asking me to be flawless. She wasn't demanding that I be someone else. She was offering partnership. She was offering to carry the weight with me. And I refused over and over because I thought carrying it alone was what made me a man. Now at 90, I sit in the quiet and I realize how backwards that was. Carrying it alone didn't make me strong. It made me lonely. It made her lonely. It made our love smaller than it could have been. I've had time to look back, and time is strange. It can soften some memories like water smoothing stones, but it can also sharpen others like light hitting glass. The memory of Evelyn asking, "Are you happy?" stays sharp. The memory of me saying, "I'm just tired," stays sharp. It stays sharp because that was the moment I chose my habits over my heart. And if you're wondering, yes, I've tried to forgive myself. I've sat with pastors and counselors. I've prayed in the early morning when the house is still. I've said her name out loud just to hear it. Some nights I even speak to her as if she's in the room, and I tell her the sentences I never said. I tell her I was afraid I would fail her. I tell her I was afraid if I admitted I wasn't happy, I would have to change, and I didn't know how. I tell her I was afraid of being seen too clearly because then someone might see the parts of me I didn't like. But forgiveness is not a switch you flip. It's a slow walk. And sometimes, late at night, I still end up back at that kitchen table, staring at that pale rectangle of light, hearing the quiet click of a door closing in someone's heart. If you're listening to me right now, I don't know your life. I don't know what you're carrying or what you've been avoiding. But I know this. The conversations you keep postponing don't disappear. They wait, and they grow heavier. And one day, if you're not careful, the person you need to have them with will be gone, and you'll be left speaking into silence. So let me say something to you as plainly as I can, from a man who learned it late. If there is someone you love and you keep giving them the safe version of you, the polished version, the responsible version, the version that never admits fear or uncertainty, you are starving that love without realizing it, not because you're bad, but because you're human and you were taught something that isn't true. The truth is, the people who love you do not need your perfection. They need your presence. They need your honesty. They need the part of you that says, "This is what I feel, and I trust you enough to know it." You might think you have time. I thought I had time. I thought there would be a better season, a calmer season, a season when I felt more ready. But the seasons kept changing without asking me, and then suddenly I was standing in a cemetery in a black suit, wishing I could trade every promotion I ever earned for 10 minutes at a kitchen table with my wife. I can't go back. That's the hard truth of being 90. I can only tell you what my nights have taught me. If you have a door you've been afraid to open, open it while you still can. Not with speeches, not with drama, just with one honest sentence. It might be awkward. You might stumble. You might not say it perfectly. But say something true, because what keeps me awake at night is not that Evelyn died. It's that I let her live and die without fully knowing me. And I let myself live beside her without fully knowing her. And that kind of distance is a quiet tragedy that doesn't show up in photographs. And if my voice reaches you at the right time, maybe you won't carry the same sound into your own old age. The soft closing of a door you could have held open with nothing more than courage and love.